Chapter 12, Working Out Details. My job was to find information, everything from CO2 scrubbers to the plumbing for the toilet, and utilizing it somehow into our craft. So for now, I was a plumber again. We also needed heating, cooling, insulation, ventilation. Then I was an AC and heating technician again. Soon, I was on NASA sites and other technical sites getting the details about life support systems, being the most important, rescrubbers for CO2, filtering, toilet issues, and how to make normal human needs out there work. I also installed piping as I was a pipe fitter and helped with anything that needed my skills and attention, which were mostly engineering and mechanical in nature, with an elementary knowledge of electrical theory. Amy and I were working on our interior, such as seats, padded counters, setting up our monitors, designing our cooking and kitchen facilities, along with all the wiring those systems needed. I was her helper some of the time. Now, as a woman, usually we're in control of those projects. Amy made the menu up and kept me company when we worked late, also collecting the facts behind all that. She was the communication expert as a master electrician. Also, she knew her job well, but also had many good ideas on how to install those systems into our machine. Other than that, one of her best ideas was a 6-inch telescope with a zoom capability with a camera, and for all the cameras that we would view the outside of our ship with. She added high power zoom to those, which had the equivalency of a 1200x. There would be 8 of them. Astronomy was one of her hobbies, which became very important now and later. But her most important contribution was wiring this whole system correctly, and at the same time figuring out where to run the highly conductive silver wiring we would need for the static component or power of our drive system. None of this would have happened without Bob's investment, which allowed us to be able to buy the best of the best equipment. Amy and I had become close now, and after time went by, we went to dinner quite frequently. And as time went by, we went to the bars and clubs for drinks sometimes. I guess you could say we were basically dating, and I, for one, was glad she was willing to take her place on the test flight. The rest of the crew members were a little apprehensive, but I convinced them because of her abilities to see ahead. She would be a great asset in this experiment and exploration. It took us a couple years to get to this point. Our investor got us into the Army surplus business so far, and the manufacturing of the balanced 3 circular bars that made up our gyroscopic heart, and bearings and some of our tools. Those 3 rings would cost a pretty penny, but they needed to be made in perfect balance, mainly because of their size and the speed of triple counter rotation they would undergo. Each one had a different base material that corresponded to the other, blended together into each ring for the electrical effects, so the balance of each had to match perfectly. Balance was very important. We took deuce-and-a-half Army trucks and turned them into monster pickup trucks. This is what we were doing on the side for money too now, so we could be at the shop most of the time and not have outside jobs and people interfering with most of our time. It was part of being off the grid. It was a great profit margin, and we were able to churn out about 10 of these to make ends meet for a while. Our profits after wages was about $100,000 refurbishing 10 of these. Our investor, Bob, would sink a good amount into these, but we would make 9 times that per unit as time went by. This paid the regular bills. You'll see in the background the part of the plane for the tail dragger. Drew on the left, Magic Square on the right. I looked for the original picture, but this is the one I have. It's in black and white. This picture was almost identical to what we built, close to the size as scaled by the astronaut, but with a third section and more narrow. It was all a matter of economics and safety. We started out with this section pictured and then welded another 8-foot section on top of this one. We had to keep this part protected because all the important electronics had to be installed in the bottom along with its drive system. For the living space and command center or the helm module, we would need another 16 feet on top of this one. The total was 24 feet high. This is the only picture we have, and it was mostly to figure out how to take that roof off. You can see the upper right corner of the hatch. Before we ever added any of the goodies, we had to see if our drive would even lift the shell. So in the beginning, we had to test just those components together at least one time. The question now was, could our device even lift at least a quarter-ton of steel and all the rest of the basic equipment and components? One of the hidden Tesla patents was a contributing factor which made this more than possible. We had to know how much power input we would need. There wasn't a known limit yet. We moved it to the open area of the yard when it was completed for that test. Then after removing the roof for the second time with Drew's crane, we moved our craft into an open area with the crane. Then we hooked up cables to the computers and power source of the static and 12 volts converted to 110 AC for different motors in the gyro. We started everything up and Carl applied the power slowly, and the shell moved to the end of the cable slack in less than a second. It levitated to the end of the cable and jolted to a stop. Everyone jumped out of their seats, and someone may have peed. I think it was Drew. It was his crane. The back of the crane was now lifted about 3 feet off the ground. Alright, I'm going to interject here. There's certain things that I cannot show you. Certain pictures I cannot show you. One, it's a danger to us to show you too much. Two, has to do with patenting. In this reality, I don't know if that's ever going to happen, but we must remain safe. So, I'll interject something of interest. And the picture I showed you of the shell, it's kind of like that, gives you a size, an idea of the scale, but without the pointy cone on top. It was flat. Carl and Magic were in panic as the surprise of this could have wrecked the crane, and as quickly as they could, slowly lowered the power when their composure returned. The ship came down along with the crane without a hitch, and that was all we needed to see that day. Magic was first to speak and said, "Did you see that slight glow?" We all said yes. That means that there's some ionization occurring, which is good. This also means that we got good extension of the magnetic field, which will get stronger as power goes up. You understand what that means, mates? That means that it is a shielding as well that will act like Earth's electromagnetic field. Everyone but Magic was still stunned, trying to quantify what just took place. He kept going. Not only that, but a magnetic field in such a close proximity of the source means as the power goes up, it should become more solid-like. It's the same thing I've seen with the plane test. Thank God. I had forgotten about that and said, that was why the weird look? Yes, blimey, I forgot about that till today. We didn't quite know why he was so excited till Carl added, that's great, because after a certain point and amount of speed through space, a grain of sand could disable the ship and kill everybody on board. Remember when I smiled at you on board the plane, Magic said? I said yes. That's when I knew, and it canceled out inertia, our inertia eventually, and I thought created somewhat of a shielding. Because what I saw that day as we went through a flock of blackbirds was that the plane pushed most of them out of the way, like they hit an invisible barrier. A couple of them directly in the path were killed. I watched it happen as we slammed into them without hitting any of the plane's surfaces. We were all elated as we sat around talking about this. When Magic spoke again, he said, I knew it wasn't air pressure. I was sure of that. The pressure was behind us in the ionization field that was lagging. Today, I saw the proof that affirms what I seen that day. It really happened the way I thought it did. It slipped my mind till now. There was a slight glow then, too. How do you know for sure? Drew asked. It should have hit the end of the crane's boom, and it didn't. It just pushed it out of the way, then lifted the crane. Didn't you see that, Magic asked? I did, Amy replied. The rest of us didn't, but we believed them. This was a really good thing. All the other technology we needed was out there. Some of it was actually online. The rest of what would come later for this project wouldn't be hard to find now. NASA has a large volume of information that we could use, and the exotic technologies we could check out was on the net already. We had already used a few of the stifled Tesla inventions from the internet and incorporated a good portion of what was missing in our research for the drive. When we did this test is when we knew that this craft, as we scanned each other's faces, became a fact. Now only was it self-sustained as far as power goes, but self-protecting inside and out. We then realized we could go out there, space. Drew shouted out, Yahoo! SpaceX ain't got nothing on us. A couple of hoo-yahs were shouted out, then we broke out some bourbon and beers, then all of us cheered each other. While we celebrated, Carl interjected, the controls seemed to work just fine, and we all acknowledged that the programming worked absolutely perfectly so far. When the ship lifted off and hit the end of the slack, the computer kept it from failing or flipping. When it hit the end of the reach of the cable, the ship remained stable because of tying the guidance computer into the three-dimensional gyro. It was strange to look at, with all the weight of the crane halfway lifted off the ground. Everyone gave Carl compliments, but there was way more to do yet. As I reminisced about my life, I knew I was doing this, that all this had already taken place. I jumped ahead to when we had acquired a couple of radar units from surplus military planes, and Amy and I were installing those about a month after the test. This is the day that Carl walked up and told us he wouldn't be going with us. We both at the same time said, "Why, Carl?" I thought it over. I can't take the risk because of the kids. It would be irresponsible of me to take the risk, especially now that we are going to attempt a flyby of the moon. Amy and I looked at each other in amazement, and then real quickly in unison said, "That's okay. Understood, Carl." We looked at each other and said, "Can't blame you." Carl kind of looked at us a bit strangely for a moment and spoke up and offered us this. "Well, no matter what, all the calculations, programs will be there, and I'll be here when we do communicate, and I can guide you with any problem or questions. It'll be like I was there." And Amy said, "It's okay. That's a good decision." And she added, "You're smart to think about the children. They're at an age now when you need to be there all the time now." This now meant there would be one empty seat, and we could open up space in the craft for other devices or electronics of some sort or more storage. We were at a point now where we would be testing the pressurization of the ship to see if it will hold our precious atmosphere. Amy and I left the shop that day and headed for Melbourne. We were at my house to clean up, then go out for dinner. She pretty much was moved in with me now, and our relationship was the best I ever had. I knew she felt the same way because she put her feelings directly into my mind, as we had an unusual connection, so I had no doubt. We decided to go to the Red Lobster, just about a mile from the house, for dinner, and once there, after getting drinks, the topic of partnership came in, as we both wondered if everybody was still on the same page with us, and that included the patents and partnership of this technology and what we had planned. The main part of the plan was to record our departure and basically the whole flight, then on our return contact all the news agencies and governmental agencies so they would afford us a safe landing and welcome. The plan's main purpose was for our safety, as Amy had brought that up in the beginning, but also to ensure that there would be no doubt as to the existence of this new great technology. There would be no subterfuge or denial. It would be at this point that the patents and plans would be turned over to the U.S. Patent Office by the ground crew, and all of us would share in an equal reward. As you know, Amy, all of our partners have signed agreements and all of our names are on the plans, but none of that is to be revealed till the time is right. I read them. They are all honest, and there's nothing to worry about in that respect. We were called and seated and ordered our surf and turf and then more drinks. Amy brought this up. "Are you as scared as I am?" Amy asked. "No, not of flying. The only thing that scares me, if it makes us all billionaires, that worries me. But no, not really. And I trust all of our crew." "No," she said. "I mean, are you scared of going out into a truly hostile and dangerous environment?" I said yes, a little. Only a fool isn't scared of that. But I have faith in our invention and our work. We will be protected, and hopefully magic's calculations on the exponential effect of the field and the manner of that phenomena is correct. We are the long-term study, aren't we? It would seem that way, she said. I have confidence we'll be all right, and as a team, we are awesome. We will see, won't we? Amy said, the main thing that keeps me brave, even though I'm scared, is that the main goal is a supreme goal above and beyond money to help our failing environment. All the perks and spin-offs after that will happen regardless, because it is the way of business and the world. Think of this. If we can perfect it and travel the galaxy, what need is there for money after a certain amount? If a person is smart, you can always have money, harvest the right meteor or asteroid, and it becomes easy. I then said, what really scares me is if I lose you and I don't have you by my side, because who knows what might happen tomorrow. She stood up, came around to my side of the booth, and planted a big juicy kiss on my lips, and then snuggled into my neck. God, I love this girl, I thought to myself, and then I told her, I love you. She wiggled to get even closer. We finished our drinks and were about to pay when Magic called me on the cell phone. I wanted us all to meet at the doghouse. This is where we had drinks from time to time and sang karaoke, which was always the best of fun on a Thursday or a Saturday night. Yeah, that sounds good. Meet you guys there. Amy asked as we drove to the bar, do you think Magic is going to back out of the test also? No, I don't see that happening. I said most of this invention is his now, and no one is as excited as he is. Let's have some fun before we get there. Light this up. After all, I'm from California. She giggled, and it was on. As we pulled into the parking lot, Magic arrived. Timing couldn't be better. He got out of his ride and then into the back seat of my truck. Good evening, mates. What's up, Big M? Hopefully you're not giving up on riding with us. No, Mike, I just wanted to discuss some important problems we need to address and incorporate into our craft. Plus, I needed to shoot through and cut loose a little with my friends. Oh, good, I said. What did we miss? Nothing really bad, he said, but as I was thinking this thing out, I realized that we have to do a maneuver when we top out our speed, because our main directional force, the prominent drive position of the device, has to be re-aimed as we travel so that we can increase the speed even more so exponentially. Well, mate, that is good, I said, playing with his accent and slang. That's not a good sound for you, mate. You sound like a kangaroo in heat. Then he laughed and we busted out giggling. You guys burned a big waffler, didn't you? This made us laugh even more. Stop with that Aussie slang, will you? I can't stop laughing, Amy managed to sputter out. When we calmed down, he went on. The main four crystals that are protruding from the bottom of our craft have to at some time be re-aimed toward our goal, and the reaction has to be reversed from repelling to attracting to the next gravity and magnetic field in our direction of travel. He suddenly stopped and said, well, mates, pass it. You want me to ring it out for you? In Australia, people nowadays share things. We busted out again, and Amy passed to Big M as he tried to imitate Cheech Marion. It didn't work that way, and why it was so funny. After he caught his breath again, he passed back, added, there's going to be 2 or more things we have to add to the craft. He went on, Carl, would have to start over with the programs, and we don't know how much time that will take. But it shouldn't take too much time. Also, we need solar panels just in case. We already have the tanks mounted for oxygen and nitrogen, so we add one CO2 tank. Depending on size and pressure, that should do it. Backup retros, I said. Amy interjected, "Do we have to talk about this tonight?" "Yes to both questions, but I promise to stop soon," he said. Then he continued for a few more minutes. "Since speed is important in many ways, this would be the easiest fix. I say this is the quickest and easiest way because there's something else Carl and I discussed that he will have to change in the programming, which will increase the reaction and force." Amy asked as I did, "What would that be?" He said, "We know that velocity of the solar winds, which are charged particles, is on an average are about 370 kilometers per second, or even more to the point of possibly doubling those numbers. These winds blow back the protective layer of the magnetic field of the Earth. It pushes back to a vortex behind the Earth on its night side. Are you getting the picture?" "Yes, sure," we both said. He continued, "Will interact not only with the magnetic field but with the vortex too, and if nothing else the charged particles, but as we pass through it there will be the vortex of the solar wind to jump off at that point. The magnetic field directs the charged particles into a vortex behind the magnetic field's currents. Look at it as two more gears in a transmission. If we can find it, we can use it. There should be a greater increase of power and speed in the beginning of our acceleration, and a savings in time and energy in the beginning of the momentum. When it tops out, our acceleration as we repel is built up first off the double vortex. Then we lock into the destination point and attract at the same time. Our speed should then keep accelerating once we turn the device on the new focal attraction, like stepping stones that lead to a rope swing. This will be for later, for more distant goals like Mars. It'll be something to test for nearby stars too, right? Is that what you're thinking?" I asked. "Sure, but not this first test because we are going only to orbit the moon, then back to Earth. We shouldn't need to use it. When we decide to go farther out into space, then we can experiment with that. Plus, it will be good to have the programming already installed just in case." "Damn, Big M, you've been busy. Let's go." As we exited the truck, "Where would we be without you, Magic Geek?" Amy added sarcastically. He responded, You Ukrainian girls are all the same. Friggin' jokers." Then he ran over, picked her up, spun her around a few times before setting her down. They had become great sardonic friends. We all laughed and proceeded into the bar for some fun. Amy sang and was brilliant, but when Magic sang Down Under and I tried a Merle Haggard song, we just got a few funny reactions with a minimum of clapping. We both had 10 ears, but it was fun just the same. It was nice to see our outside friends every once in a while and to forget for a few hours the impending test we were about to go through. I suddenly remembered what was going on, even though this seemed to be so real. I was having a life review, and then I went back to all those sinful things in my life that I had done. After that, which I won't disclose, then I viewed another incident that scared me at the time. I was frustrated while working on a house, which involved a trade I was doing as a subcontractor. While trying to get a piece of ceiling material to fit in its place, it would not cooperate, so I tried doing it with a screwdriver to help it settle into place, and as it resisted, I became very frustrated. It was the last piece, and it stopped me from leaving that job site while the temperatures outside was in the upper 90s that day. I was sweating like a horse and very frustrated, angry, cursing, and very negative attitude. The tempered screwdriver shaft turned into a rubber-type substance and bent to almost a 70-degree angle, at which point, I guess, freaked me out and I dropped it. There was no way that material I was working with could do that, since both the vinyl and aluminum were more flexible, thinner, and weaker. I was up on a ladder, and another person below me handed it to me after I asked him to see if he could bend it back in a straight shape for me. And he couldn't. I didn't know then what it meant, just that it was weird. I then continued my review of the important things I tried to accomplish in my life, but now knowing what condition I was in as I laid in the snow. Next, Chapter 13, Final Preparations.